Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start with Ms. Henderson. You've mentioned that, you're on behalf of Curling Canada today, but, hockey, tennis, rugby, skate Canada, and yourself. It has been a disastrous year. You mentioned the World Figure Skating in Montreal. Those funds will never be, you never can get them back. I mean, we had the Junos slated for Saskatoon in March 15th, and we lost up to $9 million in economic benefits. So, and we're seeing Hockey Canada, I mean, they're playing in the queue right now, but the OHL isn't playing, the Western Hockey League hasn't played. And I agree with you. Anyways, I'm going to start with curling because you're involved in that. We're seeing more of these hubs being recommended. The Scotties was for Tampa Bay, or for Thunder Bay. The Brier was for Kelowna. You have suggested now that they go to fanless hubs. Millions of dollars will be lost. Curling is a social sport, as you well know, and there will be no briar patches involved. And I don't know how curling can survive in a fanless hub that we saw the NBA and the NHL attempt earlier this year. Your comments on that?
Well, thank you very much. I think you've grasped the situation very well, Mr. Waugh. Fanless hubs are sort of an obligation that we have right now. This is really in order to fulfill contracts that we have with commercial partners. But the fact of the matter is, for any of us that are doing a fanless hub, it's trying to think beyond 20.
The interpreter would ask the witness to please hold up her mic.
Interrupt you again. Yes, there you go. Perfect.
Yes,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yes, we will all lose money doing these. This is dipping into our reserves. We're doing it on reduced staff, and the hope is really to create something better. Normally, when we do a Brier or a Tournament of Hearts, we are creating very significant income that then gets invested back into that community, and we'll never be able to do that with the situation that we find ourselves in.
I have Nutana Curling Club in my riding. They're surviving. They're fighting the city of Saskatoon over taxes. But when you fire up the ice plant, it is very expensive. And of course, most curling clubs shut down early in March. And now, they're under tremendous pressure. So what can the federal government do to support sporting facilities like curling clubs coast to coast? In your estimation, what can happen to keep that curling club open for the time being?
Well, we do work in partnership with our curling clubs on an ongoing basis. We provide them with capital assistance. We provide them with programming. We provide them with a lot of policy work and a lot of advocacy work. And each one of those curling clubs right now is fighting for their life. We kind of sit at the top of the system, I guess, if you will. So, for example, when we did a Brier in Regina a couple of years ago. It was a huge success. The money that we made from that Brier, we're a not-for-profit. That money gets invested back into local junior programs, back into local clubs.
The interpreter would please ask the witness to hold the mic closer to her mouth.
So, our inability to hold these sorts of events.
Ms. Henderson, I'm sorry. I hate to do this again. Yes, thank you.
Okay. It really affects our ability to continue to invest in these local clubs.
Regina's closed one on the east side, one on the downtown. And this is a major catastrophe, I would think, for YMCAs across the country. And we are seeing it here now with Regina closing two of their three locations in the city of Regina. Your comments on that?
Oh, it's devastating. And I think we are concerned that will continue with YMCAs, with local sport clubs, recreation, community centers. As I mentioned, many of these organizations are dependent upon registration fees of their programs to sustain their operations. And with us not registering in those programs for such a long time, it has a significant economic impact on their organizations, which prevent them from operating. They'll have a significant impact, as I mentioned, not only on our ability to access local programming to be physically active, but the contributions well beyond physical activity to the social issues faced in communities and underrepresented groups, as you mentioned, is critical. And I fear that COVID will reshape our sparse sector landscape in the future, which will look very, very differently, and that will be very, very unfortunate if that's the case.
I should mention the Regina Marlin swim team. Their home was downtown in Regina at the YMCA, and now they've lost that. So there's another catastrophe. A really good swim club in this province now looking for a new home because of the closure of the YMCA. I thought I'd start first with the Canadian Parks Recreation, Mike and Kathy. City of Saskatoon just announced for SaskTel Centre a deficit of $3.6 million for 2020, and they're facing a $1.6 million deficit for 2021. So you can see the pressure put on cities. We've had a big uproar this week in the city of Saskatoon when they said no more nets in outdoor hockey rinks. And it has caused a big kerfuffle because the 52 community-owned rinks outdoors are all volunteer-based, and now all of a sudden you can't have a net on these ice surfaces until December 17th. So you're seeing a lot of pushback from the public versus municipal, provincial, and federal governments. Just maybe comment on that, because the pools are semi-shut down, the rinks now are almost shut down, and you can see the adverse effect in the communities that we serve coast to coast here.
Yeah, I'll start on that, and thank you for the question. From our perspective, we have to follow the rules. We have to follow the regulations that are set forth for us. And I think our biggest concern is not following those rules, because we will do that no matter what. It's what happens after the regulations and the restrictions are loosened, and whether or not this kind of harm that is happening, not just with maybe relationships between groups and the public and the municipalities that are enforcing some of these regulations, but also again, the stigma of what's safe, what's not safe, how beneficial are these activities to our communities, and so on. We want to make sure that recovers as quickly as possible. I can say that recreation and parks, and probably speak for sport and community events as well, we're resilient. We're part of community. We're driven by passion. We're part of what makes Canada, Canada. So we're not going to lose these services, but we want to make sure that we're not, starting from a substantial, we're not getting into the future at a point where, we're starting from scratch with some of our activities, some of our participant bases, and so on. So again, we're following the rules. We're hoping that the relationships that are breaking down, that doesn't carry forward into the future. And that's part of the request that we have of the federal government and other levels of government to help us